The royal decree arrived on parchment so thick it could have been mistaken for dried beef jerky, which, given the state of Maverith's economy, might have been more valuable. "Tribute or champion," it read in letters that somehow managed to smoke menacingly. "Choose." Lord Aldrich stared at the proclamation while his council of equally impoverished nobles tried very hard to look like they weren't calculating which of their colleagues would taste best roasted.
"Right then,"
said Aldrich, tugging at his threadbare collar.
"Anyone fancy explaining to the Dragon King that our treasury currently contains 3 copper coins, a button, and what might be either a very old turnip or a cursed potato?"
The silence that followed could have suffocated a whale. "Champion it is!" someone squeaked, which was how Tessa found herself standing in front of the throne room 3 days later, wondering if she'd misheard the summons over the bleating of her goats.
"You want me to do what now?"
she asked, shifting the weight of her ceremonial armor that had clearly been designed for someone with significantly more shoulders and significantly less common sense. The metal was hot from sitting in the sun, but the heat barely registered. It never did. "Survive Dragonfire," said Lord Aldrich, as if he were asking her to survive Tuesday.
"Right."
Tessa scratched her nose, leaving a smudge of dirt the royal beauticians had somehow missed.
"Am I doing this because—"
"Because you got struck by lightning and lived." This came from Brahm, the court's only bard, who had the unfortunate habit of believing his own stories. His eyes gleamed with the fever of a man who'd found narrative gold. "The storm-kissed maiden of Maverith, beloved by thunder, blessed by—"
"I was 9,
Tessa interrupted.
"I was stealing apples. The lightning hit the tree, not me, and I mostly just fell out of it into a pigsty."
"Details," Brahm waved dismissively. "The point is, you're special."
"I milk goats."
"Special goat milking." Tessa turned to the third person in this conspiracy of optimists, Sir Dunrick, who smelled like he'd been marinating in ale since the last dragon attack. He leaned heavily on a walking stick that had seen better decades.
"Listen, girl,"
Dunrick growled, his one good eye focusing with effort.
"I trained 7 dragon slayers in my time. Know how many survived their first encounter?"
"How many?"
"None. But you—"
He jabbed the stick at her, nearly losing his balance.
"You've got something they didn't."
"A death wish?"
"No idea what you're doing."
He grinned, showing teeth like broken fence posts.
"Dragons expect heroes. You're not a hero, you're—"
He squinted.
"What are you?"
"Annoyed, mostly."
"Perfect."
And so Tessa found herself trudging up Mount Pyrrhic, because of course it was called that, wearing armor that chafed in places she didn't know could chafe, carrying a sword she'd been assured was probably sharp, and followed by Brahm, who insisted on composing her epic ballad in real time.
"What rhymes with certain doom?" he called out cheerfully.
"Your tomb if you don't shut up,"
Tessa muttered, then paused. That was actually quite good. Maybe she was getting the hang of this hero business. The mountain path wound through the landscapes that grew progressively more hostile to life. First went the trees, then the grass, then even the stubborn mountain moss that usually survived everything. By the time they reached the burning steps, ancient stairs carved from volcanic glass, the air itself tasted like a blacksmith's fever dream.
"This is where I'll leave you,"
Dunkirk announced, though he'd been saying that for the past 3 miles. "You're not coming?" Brahm looked genuinely shocked, as if the script he'd written in his head didn't include the mentor character staying behind.
"I've got goats to tend," Dunrick said. "Besides, I already know how this ends."
"Badly?"
Tessa suggested.
"Interestingly."
He pulled a flask from somewhere in his ratty cloak, took a long drink, then offered it to her.
"For the nerves."
Tessa took a swig and immediately regretted it. The liquid burned worse than the time she'd accidentally drunk lamp oil.
Ugh, what is this?
"Courage. Also probably paint thinner. Hard to tell these days."
He corked the flask and fixed her with his good eye.
"Remember, girl, dragons are old magic. Old magic thinks it knows everything. Your job is to be too stupid to die properly."
The burn settled into a familiar warmth in her chest, like the time she'd pulled fresh bread from the oven with her bare hands because she'd forgotten the mitts again. She'd been scolded for that, but the bread hadn't even left marks.
That's the worst advice I've ever heard.
Which is why it might work.
With that pearl of wisdom, he turned and began his unsteady descent, leaving Tessa and Brahm to face the final approach alone. The Dragon King's lair wasn't what Tessa expected. She'd imagined a cave, perhaps some scattered bones, maybe a few ominous stalactites. Instead, she found herself standing before the ruins of what had once been a palace. Obsidian towers melted and reformed into impossible shapes. Courtyards where fountains had once played now bubbled with lava. At the center of it all, a throne room opened to the sky, its roof long since burned away.
"Oh," Brahm whispered. "Oh, this is good. This is very good. The contrast between former grandeur and current devastation. The metaphorical weight of—"
Brahm,
"Yes?"
hide.
"What? No! I need to witness your glorious—"
The temperature spiked so fast, Tessa's armor went from uncomfortable to unbearable in a heartbeat. Something vast moved in the throne room, and even from 100 yards away, she could feel the presence of it. Ancient, angry, bored. Somehow the boredom was the most terrifying part.
"Actually, hiding sounds brilliant,"
Brahm squeaked, and dove behind a melted statue that might once have been a horse or a very ambitious fish. Tessa approached the throne room with all the enthusiasm of someone approaching their own funeral, which, she reflected, was probably accurate. The ceremonial sword dragged behind her, leaving scratches on the volcanic glass. The armor clanked with each step. She'd never felt less heroic in her life. Which was, perhaps, why she didn't die in the first 3 seconds. The Dragon King, and oh, what an inadequate title that was, lounged across a throne that could have seated a small village. Vale Garoth, the endless flame, was the color of a sunset having a bad day, all reds and golds and edges of black that suggested violence barely contained. His eyes were pools of molten copper, and when he smiled, it was like watching a volcano consider its options.
"So,"
the dragon said, and his voice was the sound of forest fires thinking out loud.
"They sent me a child playing dress-up."
Tessa's mouth went dry. Then, because she'd never been good at keeping quiet when she should,
The armor came with the job. I wanted to wear my work clothes, but apparently that's not heroic enough.
the dragon's head tilted, just slightly, the way a cat's does when it's not sure if something is prey or furniture.
"You're not afraid."
Oh, I'm terrified.
Tessa admitted.
But I'm also tired. My feet hurt, and this armor is chafing something awful. Fia's gonna have to get 9.
Vale Garoth laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was the sound of mountains splitting, of clouds being torn apart by wind.
"Do you know why I demanded tribute, little not hero?"
Because you can?
"Because I am owed."
The dragon uncoiled from its throne, and Tessa realized she'd vastly underestimated his size. He wasn't just large, he redefined the concept.
"Your kingdom sits on land I burned clear of forests 5 centuries ago. Your crops grow in soil enriched by the ash of my enemies. You exist because I allow it."
Must be nice.
Tessa said, brain apparently disconnected from any sense of self-preservation.
Having that kind of job security.
The dragon went very, very still. Then,
"Burn!"
the fire came so fast that Tessa didn't have time to dodge. It washed over her like water, if water were made of pure heat and hatred. She closed her eyes, waiting for the pain, for the end, for nothing. She opened her eyes. The dragon's fire still poured over her, hot enough to turn the stone beneath her feet to glass, but she felt warm, like standing too close to a hearth. Uncomfortable, but not unbearable. The fire stopped.
Huh,
said Tessa.
"Impossible,"
said Valgaroth. They stared at each other, dragon and farm girl, united in their complete bafflement.
do it again.
Tessa suggested, partly because she was curious, and partly because her brain had apparently decided to take a holiday from rational thought. The dragon obliged. This time the fire was hotter, more focused. Tessa watched her ceremonial armor glow cherry red and start to deform. The sword melted into an artistic puddle. Her boots, her good boots that she'd spent 3 months saving for, turned to ash. But Tessa herself stood there, soot-covered and slightly irritated, like someone who'd been caught in a warm rain.
"That's not normal,"
she observed.
"You're not normal,"
Valgaroth roared, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the Dragon King sounded genuinely upset.
"Yeah, my mother used to say that too."
Tessa looked down at herself, taking stock. Her clothes were gone, but the ceremonial undergarments, woven from some supposedly magical thread, had survived. They were also, she noted with dismay, bright purple.
"Look, this is awkward for both of us. How about I just go home and we pretend this never happened?"
"You survived my flames."
"Barely. I mean, look at me. I'm in purple underwear in front of a dragon. I've had better days."
"You survived my flames."
Each word came out like its own sentence, as if the dragon was trying to convince himself of an impossible truth.
"Yes, we've established that. Can I have a cloak or something? It's drafty in here."
What followed was the most surreal negotiation of Tessa's life, which was saying something given the past hour. The dragon, it turned out, was having an existential crisis. His entire identity, millennia of careful brand management as the endless flame, he who turns all to ash, the burning scourge of the 17 kingdoms, had just been undermined by a goat farmer in purple underwear.
"Perhaps your flames are weakening?"
Tessa suggested, trying to be helpful while wrapping herself in a banner she'd found. It had probably been majestic once. Now it was mostly char with delusions of fabric.
"My flames are not..."
Valgaroth caught himself, visibly struggling for composure. Dragons, Tessa was learning, had a lot of pride tied up in their primary weapons.
"My flames are perfect. You are the anomaly."
"Story of my life."
"Explain."
So Tessa did, because what else was she going to do? She told him about the lightning strike, though she emphasized again that it had hit the tree, not her. About falling into a forge as a child and emerging with nothing worse than a cough and some minor burns. About the time she'd grabbed a cooking pot without thinking, and only realized it was fresh from the fire when her mother screamed.
"I thought I was just lucky,"
she finished.
"Or stupid. Probably both."
The dragon circled her slowly, like a very large, very dangerous academic considering a thesis.
"Those are stories,"
he said finally,
"of humans born wrong. Neural pathways that don't connect properly. Can't feel heat as pain."
"That sounds made up."
"So does a human surviving dragonfire. Yet here we are."
He paused directly in front of her, lowering his massive head until they were eye to eye.
"You interest me."
"That's good?"
"It means I'm not going to eat you. Yet."
He straightened, and there was something almost like humor in his ancient eyes.
"Instead, you'll stay here. I'll run tests."
"Tests?"
"I haven't had a good puzzle in 3 centuries. You'll do nicely."
Which was how Tessa, who started the day milking goats, ended it as the Dragon King's personal science experiment. From his hiding spot behind the melted statue, Brahm watched all of this with the expression of someone whose epic ballad had just taken a very unexpected turn. He'd need to find words that rhymed with thermal insensitivity. This was going to be a very different song. 3 weeks into her captivity, Tessa had established several important facts. 1. Dragons were terrible housekeepers. 2. Lava beetles, while not cuddly, made surprisingly good conversation. 3. Being fireproof didn't mean being comfortable.
"You're humming,"
Valgaroth observed, watching her reorganize his hoard for the 3rd time.
"Prisoners don't usually hum."
"Prisoners usually have worse working conditions."
Tessa hefted a golden statue of someone historically important and historically ugly.
You know, this would go better if you actually use shelves. Just throwing everything in piles is insulting to the treasures.
I'm a dragon. We don't do interior design.
Obviously.
She sneezed as centuries of dust billowed up.
When's the last time you cleaned in here?
The 7th Age?
Which was?
Before your kingdom invented the wheel.
Tessa made a face that suggested several opinions about draconic hygiene, none of them complimentary. She'd been organizing partly out of boredom, partly because the chaos offended her practical soul, and mostly because it annoyed Valgaroth in ways he couldn't quite articulate.
Test 14,
the dragon announced, pretending he hadn't been watching her dust his favorite skulls.
Molten copper immersion.
Pass.
I haven't done it yet.
We did molten lead yesterday, and molten silver the day before.
Tessa didn't look up from her sorting.
Unless copper has some magical property I'm unaware of, we're just wasting time.
You're remarkably blasé about being dipped in liquid metal.
You're remarkably predictable about your testing methods.
She held up a gem the size of her head.
What's this?
The heart of Emperor Maltheos. He betrayed me. I ate him.
Did it help?
Not particularly.
Revenge rarely does.
She added it to the hearts of various people pile she'd started. There were a disturbing number of metaphorical organs in his hoard.
You know what I think?
I'm certain you'll tell me regardless.
I think you're not trying to understand why I'm fireproof. I think you're trying to find something that will hurt me.
Silence stretched between them like a cat settling in for a long nap.
Is that so wrong?
Valgaroth asked finally.
You've undermined everything I am. The least you could do is have the decency to burn.
Sorry to disappoint.
Tessa moved on to a pile of crowns.
But since we're being honest, can I ask something?
You've done nothing but ask questions since you arrived.
Why are you dying?
The dragon went very still. It was the kind of stillness that preceded natural disasters.
I'm not.
You are.
Tessa turned to face him, crown in hand.
You sleep 16 hours a day. You haven't hunted once since I've been here, and that cough you think I don't notice? That's not normal dragon behavior.
How would you know what's normal dragon behavior?
Brom left me a book.
She pulled out a small, singed volume titled Dragons, a comprehensive guide to not dying.
He threw it through the entrance last week, along with more epic poems about Mars' sacrifice. He's rhyming my name with Blessed A now. I may have to kill him.
Get in line.
Valgaroth shifted, and Tessa could see the effort it took.
What makes you think I'm dying?
You're burning yourself up.
She gestured to the molten channels that ran through the throne room.
All this heat, all this fire, is not coming from some magical source. It's coming from you, and it's killing you.
Fire is what I am.
Fire is what you do. There's a difference.
Spoken like a human.
Spoken like someone who knows the difference between a tool and an identity.
She went back to sorting, but her movements were gentler now.
How long?
A century, perhaps 2.
He shifted, and the movement seemed to pain him.
It's accelerating lately.
Why?
My fire is tied to the belief in it. For centuries you humans feared me properly, sent heroes, wept at my name.
His laugh was bitter smoke.
Last year, your kingdom sent accountants to haggle over tribute rates. Accountants! They brought forms in triplicate.
That's
insulting and apparently fatal. Fear feeds dragonfire. Bureaucracy, it seems, smothers it.
That's a long time to be dying.
Dragons do everything slowly, even dying.
He laughed, and it sounded like embers settling.
Especially dying.
They fell into an oddly comfortable silence. Tessa sorted. Valgaroth pretended not to watch. Somewhere in the depths of the ruined palace, lava beetles clicked out a rhythm that might have been gossip or might have been Mozart.
I could help.
Tessa said eventually.
You? Help me?
The dragon's amusement was warm enough to raise the temperature several degrees.
You're my prisoner.
I'm your house guest with a scheduling conflict.
She held up a scepter that was definitely cursed.
This goes in the probably shouldn't touch pile, right?
Definitely. And you're definitely a prisoner.
Prisoners don't get to criticise their captor's filing system, or demand better tea.
She'd been very specific about the tea. Dragon tea, it turned out, was just hot water with sulfur.
Face it, you're terrible at this whole prisoner/captor dynamic.
I could eat you.
You could try, but then who would organise your horde? Or listen to you complain about modern knights not having proper respect for traditional combat forms?
She paused.
Or figure out why you're burning yourself up.
Valgaroth considered this.
What do you know about dragon physiology?
Nothing, but I know about being broken in ways nobody understands.
She touched her arm absently, remembering a dozen childhood incidents that should have left scars.
I know about being wrong in ways that make you dangerous to yourself.
I'm not broken.
Neither am I. We're just differently designed.
The dragon snorted, which in a confined space was like someone setting off a small explosive.
You sound like Brahms' poetry.
Take that back.
Make me.
And so began the strangest friendship in the long history of human-dragon relations. Not that either of them would have called it friendship. Valgaroth insisted he was simply studying a fascinating specimen. Tessa maintained she was just making the best of a bad situation. But friendship it was, built on shared meals. Tessa eating normal food, Valgaroth consuming concerning amounts of coal, terrible jokes, dragons, it turned out, had a weakness for puns, and long discussions about everything from the proper way to stack gold coins to the philosophical implications of immortality.
You're not what I expected,
Valgaroth admitted one evening, watching Tessa attempt to teach the lava beetles basic formations. They weren't very good at it, but they seemed to enjoy the attention.
What did you expect?
Heroes usually come in 3 types, the dragon explained. The noble ones who make speeches about justice, I eat those immediately. The clever ones who try to outwit me, I eat those slowly. And the desperate ones who just want to survive, I usually let those go out of pity.
Which am I?
None of the above.
He tilted his massive head.
You're just here, being yourself. It's disturbing.
Sorry.
No, you're not.
No, I'm not.
Tessa grinned.
But it seemed polite to say.
It was during one of these conversations that the subject of the soil came up. Tessa had been complaining about Maverith's failing crops. Not because she expected sympathy, but because complaining about agriculture was her default small talk when Valgaroth did something unexpected. He flinched.
What?
Tessa asked, immediately alert. Dragons didn't flinch. It was like watching a mountain suddenly feel self-conscious.
Nothing.
That wasn't nothing. That was definitely something.
Drop it.
I've reorganized your entire horde, taught your lava beetles to march in formation, and haven't once complained about the sulfur smell. I've earned the right to push.
She crossed her arms.
What do you know about our crops?
Valgaroth was quiet for so long, Tessa thought he might have turned to stone. Finally,
follow me.
He led her deeper into the palace than she'd ever been, through passages that glowed with their own heat, past chambers filled with treasures that made his throne room hoard look like pocket change. Finally, they reached a vast underground chamber, and Tessa understood. The room was full of soil, rich, black soil that smelled like every good harvest she'd ever known. It was piled in careful mounds, preserved by the heat that would normally destroy it, kept in stasis by dragon magic she didn't understand.
The last fertile earth in 5 kingdoms,
Valgaroth said quietly.
I've been saving it.
Saving it? While people starve?
Saving it from them.
His voice hardened, but there was old pain beneath the anger.
The last time I trusted humans with paradise, they were your ancestors. The city of Ashenmere. They built something so beautiful it made the stars weep. Gardens that sang, fountains that painted pictures in water, children who learned to read by tracing words in soft earth.
He was quiet for a moment, lost in memory.
A century later, it was a salted wasteland. They'd fought 3 wars over water rights, burned the gardens for siege weapons, and the children dug in dead earth for roots that would never grow again.
His eyes found hers.
I saved this soil not from my enemies, but from my friends, from what you always do to beautiful things.
That's not...
Isn't it?
He turned to her, and his eyes were older than she'd ever seen them.
I've watched your kind for millennia. Your locusts with thumbs give you paradise, and you'll pave it within a century.
Tessa wanted to argue. She wanted to defend humanity, to make speeches about potential and growth and all the things Brahm would have put in a ballad. Instead, she said this.
You're probably right.
Valgaroth blinked.
What?
You're probably right. Humans are terrible at long-term thinking. We're selfish and short-sighted, and we break things.
She ran her hand through the nearest pile of soil, feeling its potential.
But we're also the only species stupid enough to try to fix what we break. Dragons hoard, humans hope.
Hope? He said it like it tasted bad.
Hope, she said sadly. It's our worst quality and our best one. We hope things will get better. We hope we'll do better. Sometimes we even do.
And if you don't?
Then we hope harder.
She looked up at him.
That's what you don't understand about us. We're not locusts, we're weeds. We grow in impossible places. We survive things that should kill us, and we keep coming back. Not because we're strong, because we're too stupid to know when we're beat.
That's not a recommendation.
It's not meant to be, it's just true.
She stood, dusting off her hands.
Keep your soil, but know that while you're preserving paradise down here, people are learning to grow crops in salted earth up there. It won't be as good, it won't be as fast, but they'll do it anyway, because that's what humans do. We make do.
They stood there, dragon and human, surrounded by the wealth of ages and the smell of possibility.
I could help them, Valgaroth said finally. Release some of the soil, just enough to...
To what? Prove me wrong? Prove yourself right?
Tessa shook her head.
Do it because it's right, or don't do it at all. But don't do it to win an argument with a goat farmer.
You're the most irritating prisoner I've ever had.
Thank you, I'll try.
As they made their way back to the throne room, Tessa noticed something. The channels of lava seemed dimmer. The ambient temperature had dropped a few degrees, and Valgaroth's breathing, while still labored, seemed easier.
You're feeling better,
she observed.
Nonsense.
You haven't coughed once since we started talking.
Coincidence.
You're a terrible liar for an ancient magical being.
And you're an observant prisoner for a goat farmer.
They reached the throne room to find they had visitors. A squad of knights stood in battle formation, armor gleaming despite the heat, weapons drawn. At their head stood someone Tessa vaguely recognized as Lord Aldrich's son, all shining armor and heroic jawline.
"Fear not, fair maiden,"
he declared.
"We've come to rescue you."
Tessa and Valgaroth exchanged looks.
"Rescue?"
Tessa said.
"From the beast."
The prince gestured dramatically at Valgaroth.
"We'll slay the monster and return you to..." "Did you just call him a beast?"
Tessa interrupted.
"He has a name, and feelings, and a surprisingly good sense of humour once you get to know him." "But he's a dragon." "And you're rude. What's your point?"
The knights shifted uncertainly. This was not how rescues were supposed to go.
"He's holding you prisoner,"
the prince tried again.
"Actually, we were just discussing agricultural reform."
She glanced at Valgaroth.
Want me to handle this?
By all means. I haven't had dinner yet.
No eating the rescue party. We've talked about this.
We've talked about not eating messengers. Nothing about rescue parties.
Same principle applies.
The prince's face was cycling through various shades of confusion and indignation.
You're bantering with it? Him, not it, him.
Tessa stepped forward, and several knights stepped back. She'd learned to move like someone who walked through dragonfire for fun. It was amazingly effective.
And yes, we banter. We also play chess. He's terrible at it.
I am not.
You always lead with your queen.
It's an aggressive strategy.
It's predictable is what it is. Enough!
The prince raised his sword.
You're clearly under some spell. We'll free you and...
Tessa laughed. She couldn't help it. The whole situation was so absurd, so perfectly backwards from every story she'd ever heard. The laughter was the only reasonable response.
A spell? You think I'm here because of a spell?
She gestured around the throne room, at the carefully organized treasures, at the lava beetles now practicing their formations in the corner.
I'm here because it's interesting, because he's interesting, because for the first time in my life, I've found someone who's as weird as I am.
I'm not weird,
Veilgaroth protested.
You alphabetize your skull collection.
That's being organized.
You have a skull collection.
That's being thorough.
The rescue party was backing toward the door now, clearly unnerved by the domestic bickering between their target and her supposed captor.
Well, we'll come back, the prince managed, with more knights and priests and... Don't bother,
Tessa called after them.
But if you see Brom, tell him I'm fine, and that if he rhymes my name with Blessed A one more time, I'm feeding his loot to the lava beetles.
The knights fled. It wasn't a retreat, technically. Retreats involve more organization and less undignified scrambling.
Well,
Veilgaroth said after a moment,
that was fun.
We should probably expect more of them.
Probably. Should I be worried?
Tessa considered this.
Can they do anything you haven't already tried?
Unlikely.
Then no.
She went back to her sorting.
But maybe we should work on that whole dying of dragonfire thing just in case.
We?
Unless you've got other plans.
The dragon was quiet for a moment. Then,
no other plans.
And so the prisoner and her captor went back to their routine, preparing for a war neither of them particularly wanted, building a friendship neither of them would admit to, and slowly, carefully, trying to save each other from themselves. The revolution started, as most revolutions do, with gossip and bread.
She walked through dragonfire,
whispered the baker, adding extra flour to stretch the dough a little further.
She tamed the beast,
insisted the blacksmith, hammering out horseshoes from increasingly creative sources of metal.
She's teaching it to waltz,
claimed someone who definitely had too much of Dunkirk's special courage juice. Brom, for his part, had given up conventional rhyme schemes entirely and moved into interpretive performance art. His latest piece involved 3 chickens, a bucket of symbolic water, and what he claimed was an authentic recreation of Tessa's defiant stance. The chickens were unimpressed.
She's probably dead,
Lord Aldrich said for the 5th time that morning, staring at the kingdom's ledgers as if they might spontaneously generate money.
The rescue party said she was playing chess with it,
his treasurer reminded him.
Clearly a hallucination brought on by heat stroke. All 12 of them?
Mass heat stroke.
But the people knew better. The people always did. They'd seen too many heroes march up the mountain in shining armor, only to return as strategically placed scorch marks. Tessa had gone up in borrowed metal and attitude, and she was still alive 3 months later. That had to mean something.
Maybe,
suggested Widow Henley, who'd buried 2 sons to dragon tribute.
We've been doing this wrong.
Maybe,
agreed Farmer Morris, whose crops grew stubbornly in soil more salt than earth.
It's time to try something different.
And so, while their lords debated and their knights polished armor that would never be enough, the people of Maverith did what humans do best. They got creative with inadequate resources. Meanwhile, on Mount Pyrrhic, Tessa was elbow-deep in dragon anatomy texts that predated several kingdoms.
This doesn't make sense,
she muttered, cross-referencing a diagram that looked like someone had tried to map a volcano while drunk.
Your fire production should be here, but your heat centers are here. And this whole system...
She waved at a particularly incomprehensible squiggle.
What even is this?
The eternal flame matrix,
Veilgaroth said, from where he lounged, watching her work with amusement.
Source of my power and majesty.
Source of your problems, more like.
She grabbed another book.
Look, according to this, dragons are supposed to have a cooling cycle, like a biological heat sink. But you've been running hot for so long, your entire system is...
Choose your next words carefully.
Constipated.
That is not the word I would have chosen.
But it's accurate.
She showed him the diagram, tracing the blocked channels with one finger.
You're backed up, and all that fire, all that power, nowhere for the excess to go. So it just builds and builds until...
Until it burns me from the inside out.
His voice was very quiet.
Yeah.
They sat with that truth for a moment. The lava beetles, sensing the mood, stopped their marching practice and huddled together for comfort.
There might be a way,
Tessa said finally,
but you won't like it.
I'm dying. I don't like that either.
You need to stop being fire.
I am fire.
No, you do fire. There's a difference.
She set aside the books and faced him directly.
When I was a kid, after the lightning thing, the village healer told me I was broken. Said my body wouldn't work right, that I was wrong somehow. Spent years trying to fix me.
Did it work?
Of course not, because I wasn't broken. I was just different.
She gestured to herself.
This thing that makes me survive your fire, it's not a blessing or a curse, it's just how I'm wired. And fighting it, trying to be normal, that would have been what broke me.
Your point?
You've been to the endless flame for so long, you've forgotten you're also just Veilgaroth, the dragon who hoards books and plays terrible chess and gets weirdly emotional about proper treasure organization.
I do not get emotional about...
You cried when I suggested organizing by size instead of conquest date.
Those were tears of frustration.
Still, tears, she softened. You're so busy being what everyone expects. The terrible dragon, the endless flame, that you're burning yourself up trying to maintain it.
And what would you have me be instead? A lamb? A pet?
Yourself, whatever that is.
The dragon was quiet for a long moment. Then,
I don't remember who that is anymore.
Then we'll figure it out together.
It was at this touching moment that the attack came. Not knights this time. The people of Maverith had learned. They came with mirrors and water, with salt and ingenuity. They came with the kind of desperate creativity that only humans backed into a corner could muster. They also came with Brahm, who'd finally given up on rhyming entirely and was just shouting encouragement that may or may not have been in any known language.
Rise, people of Maverith,
bellowed, waving what appeared to be a chicken on a stick.
Throw off the chains of draconic oppression.
Are those my chickens?
Tessa asked, momentarily distracted from the siege.
Symbolic chickens,
Brahm corrected.
Symbols of our freedom.
They look like my chickens.
The assault was chaos, but organized chaos. Farmers who'd spent their lives irrigating impossible land turned those skills to redirecting lava flows. Crafters who'd learned to make do with scraps built siege engines from furniture and hope. Even Dunrick was there, significantly more sober than usual, directing traffic with the skill of someone who'd actually paid attention during his dragon-slaying days. Tessa watched him, impossibly clear-eyed and steady, directing a group of farmers with nothing but hand signals and a battered shield. He moved with the forgotten confidence of a man who knew exactly how a dragon would attack. And for the first time, she saw the slayer he used to be, not the drunk he had become. When a gout of flame came too close to his group, he raised the shield at precisely the right angle, deflecting it harmlessly skyward. The farmers looked at him with something approaching awe. So did Tessa.
This is very bad,
Veilgaroth observed, watching a particularly clever bit of mirror work reflect his own flames back at him.
This is revolution,
Tessa corrected.
Humans do this sometimes.
Do what?
Get fed up. Decide that dying on their feet beats living on their knees.
She watched her people, and they were her people, she realized. These stubborn, impossible, beautiful idiots press forward despite impossible odds.
Usually ends badly.
And yet they persist.
Like I said, we're too stupid to know when we're beat.
The battle raged. Veilgaroth fought back, but his heart wasn't in it. His flames, already weakened by months of Tessa's meddling with his biology, guttered and sparked instead of roaring. The revolutionaries pressed closer.
I could kill them all,
he said quietly.
Even weakened, even dying, I could end this.
You could,
Tessa agreed.
But you don't want me to.
But you don't want to.
He looked at her.
When did you get so wise?
Probably around the time you started organizing your hoard by sentimental value instead of material worth.
That was your idea.
And you did it anyway.
The revolutionaries had reached the throne room now. Veilgaroth could retreat deeper into the palace, could make them pay for every inch in blood and burnt dreams. Instead, he did something nobody expected. He sat down. Just sat. Right there in the middle of his throne room, surrounded by centuries of hoarded wealth and carefully organized memories.
I'm tired,
he announced to the stunned crowd.
I'm dying, and I'm tired of being what you need me to be so you can feel heroic about fighting me.
The revolution stuttered to a confused halt. This wasn't in anyone's script.
He's surrendering?
Someone whispered.
It's a trick,
another insisted.
Actually,
Tessa said, stepping forward,
he's having an existential crisis. He does that sometimes. Usually, I make tea.
Tessa!
Brahm rushed forward, chicken stick still raised.
You're alive and unburnt, and why are you wearing his emergency hoard as a cloak?
My clothes kept burning off. We had to improvise.
She surveyed the crowd of neighbors, friends, and people she'd sold goat milk to.
So, revolution, how's that working out for you? We came to save you,
Widow Henley said, clutching what looked like a weaponized butter churn.
That's sweet. Unnecessary, but sweet.
Tessa gestured to Veilgaroth.
Everyone, meet Veilgaroth. He's dying, emotionally constipated, and owns more books than the Royal Library. Veilgaroth, meet everyone. They're hungry, desperate, and significantly better at siege warfare than anyone expected.
This is deeply uncomfortable,
the dragon muttered.
Welcome to feelings. They're terrible. You'll get used to them.
What followed was possibly the most awkward negotiation in history. A dying dragon, a fireproof farmer, and a mob of revolutionary citizens trying to figure out what came next when the monster turned out to be just another broken soul trying to make it through eternity.
The soil,
Farmer Morris said finally.
We need the soil. It's downstairs,
Veilgaroth said tiredly.
Take it all. I don't care anymore.
No,
Tessa's voice cut through the murmur of excitement.
Not like that.
What?
He's been hoarding it for centuries, keeping it safe from us because he thought we'd waste it. And honestly, he's probably right. We're not great at long-term thinking.
She looked around the room.
But we are good at learning. So here's what we're going to do.
And she laid out a plan. Not a heroic plan, not a grand gesture, but a human plan. Practical, messy, requiring cooperation between species that had been enemies longer than anyone could remember.
You're serious,
Veilgaroth said when she finished.
Dead serious. You know everything about preserving soil. We know everything about growing in impossible conditions. Together, we might actually make this work.
And if we don't?
Then we fail together, like friends do.
The dragon looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. Not the bitter, burning laugh of before, but something lighter, something that didn't hurt.
You realize this is insane.
All the best ideas are.
And so began the strangest partnership in agricultural history. dragon knowledge and human determination, ancient wisdom and desperate innovation. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, arguments, and more than one incident involving weaponized farming equipment. But it worked. Slowly, carefully, with more stubbornness than skill, they made it work. The transformation didn't happen overnight. Velgaroth had to learn to let go of centuries of hoarding instincts. The humans had to learn that sustainable farming meant thinking beyond the next harvest. Tessa had to learn that mediating between a dragon with control issues and farmers with torches was even harder than organizing a horde.
"I hate this,"
Velgaroth announced one morning, watching humans carefully tend the relocated soil.
No, you don't,
Tessa said, not looking up from her ledger. They discovered she had a head for numbers, when those numbers involved crop yields.
"They're touching my soil."
Their soil now. We agreed.
"I was emotionally compromised. Doesn't count."
You literally signed a contract.
"Under duress."
You dictated the terms.
"Emotional duress."
But he kept watching. And when young Tom, Widow Henley's grandson, brought him a handful of sprouting seeds to show off, the dragon's eyes went soft in ways that had nothing to do with dying.
"Harvest from the new soil,"
Tom said proudly.
"Gran says we should name them Dragon Tears 'cause they're all sparkly."
"That's a terrible name,"
Velgaroth said.
"What would you call them?"
The dragon considered. Hope. Tom made a face.
"That's even worse."
"Respect your elders, tiny human."
"You're not my elder. You're my business partner. Tessa said so."
Tessa hid her smile as the dragon and the child bickered about agricultural branding. 6 months ago, Velgaroth would have eaten anyone who spoke to him like that. Now he was debating marketing strategies with a 7-year-old. The healing wasn't just agricultural. As Velgaroth learned to let go of his fire, to stop burning himself up maintaining an image, his health improved. He was still dying. Dragons didn't simply stop dying any more than mountains decided not to erode. But it was slower now, gentler.
"Centuries,"
he told Tessa one evening as they watched the sunset over fields that actually had crops in them.
"You've given me centuries."
You gave yourself centuries. I just suggested you stop being an idiot about it.
"Such tender bedside manner."
You want tender? Hire a nurse. You want honesty? You stuck with me.
"I wouldn't have it any other way."
They sat in comfortable silence, dragon and human, watching their impossible experiment grow. In the distance, Brahm was composing something that probably rhymed soil with toil and would make everyone involved wish for deafness.
"Thank you,"
Velgaroth said quietly.
For what?
"For being too stupid to die properly."
Tessa grinned.
Right back at you, you overgrown lighter.
The dragon laughed, and somewhere in the kingdom below, people who'd learned to fear that sound realized it meant something different now. Not danger, not death. Just two impossible friends proving that sometimes the best victories were the ones where everyone got to go home. Even if home was a mountain full of carefully organized treasure and surprisingly well-tended lava beetles.
By the way,
Tessa said,
I'm teaching the beetles to dance next.
"Absolutely not."
Already started. They're very enthusiastic.
"I will eat you."
No, you won't.
"No."
Velgaroth agreed, smiling despite himself.
"I won't."
And he didn't. Instead, they lived. Messily, imperfectly, impossibly. But they lived. 5 years later, Dunrick's School of Mostly Not Dying had become the premier institution for human-dragon relations in 7 kingdoms. The curriculum was unorthodox.
"Right,"
Dunrick said to his latest class, still leaning on his walking stick but considerably less drunk these days.
"First rule of dragon slaying, don't."
But
A young knight started.
"Did I stutter? Don't slay dragons. Talk to them. Trick them. Bore them to death with agricultural statistics if you have to, but slaying, that's for heroes, and heroes are idiots."
But you were a hero.
"Exactly, and look how that turned out."
He gestured to his missing leg.
"Now, Can anyone tell me the proper greeting for a dragon who's hoarding books versus one who's hoarding gold?
From the back of the classroom, Tessa watched with amusement. She'd been invited to guest lecture, but mostly just heckled Dunrick when he got his facts wrong, which was often.
The book dragon gets a literary quote,
A student offered.
Which one?
Something classical?
Wrong. Book dragons are snobs. Quote something obscure. Make them feel smart.
Dunrick pointed his stick at another student.
You, gold dragon, go.
Compliment their organizational system?
Better, but not quite. Tessa.
Criticize their organizational system,
she said.
Tell them it's inefficient. They'll spend hours explaining why you're wrong, forget to eat you, and by the end, you'll be friends.
She's joking,
Dunrick told the class.
She's not,
said Velgaroth, squeezing through the door with difficulty. The classroom had not been built for dragons.
My entire life was ruined by this woman suggesting I organize by emotional significance rather than monetary value.
Your life was saved,
Tessa corrected.
Ruined. I can't find anything anymore.
That's because you keep reorganizing based on your mood.
Well, how else am I supposed to process my feelings?
The class stared. This was not how they imagined dragons.
Sir,
one brave soul ventured.
Aren't you Velgaroth, the Endless Flame? Terror of the Eastern Kingdoms, destroyer of the 5 armies of Karth?
Retired, Velgaroth said. I'm in sustainable agriculture now.
You burned down Karth.
I did a lot of things. Now I grow heirloom tomatoes.
He produced a basket of admittedly impressive vegetables.
Would you like one? They're excellent in salads.
This is deeply disturbing,
the student whispered.
Good,
Dunrick barked.
Life is disturbing, dragons are disturbing, humans are disturbing. The whole world is a disturbing mess of things that shouldn't work but do anyway. Your job is to make it work slightly better.
Through violence?
Through vegetables, if necessary.
He gestured to the door.
Class dismissed. Tomorrow we'll cover how to tell if a dragon is being sarcastic. Hint, they're always being sarcastic.
The students filed out, looking dazed. Several were clutching tomatoes like talismans against an increasingly confusing world.
You're traumatizing them,
Tessa observed.
Good. Trauma builds character.
Dunrick settled onto a bench with a grunt.
How's the new settlement?
Growing. We got 3 dozen families now, all working the dragon soil. Yields up 30% from last season.
And our scaly friend?
Velgaroth puffed up with pride.
I've been asked to consult for 2 other kingdoms. Apparently my methods are revolutionary.
Your methods are just common sense with better vocabulary,
Tessa said.
That's what revolutionary means.
They bickered amiably, the way old friends do. Somewhere in the distance, Brahms' latest composition drifted onto the wind. He'd finally found words that rhymed with Tessa properly, though she maintained that Blessed Anessa was cheating.
You know what I still don't understand?
Dunrick said suddenly.
Why you didn't burn?
Tessa shrugged.
Lucky, I guess.
It's not luck, Velgaroth said. I've run every test, read every book, consulted healers, mages, and one particularly annoying oracle. There's no logical reason she should be fireproof.
Maybe that's the point,
Tessa suggested.
Maybe sometimes things just are. No grand destiny, no chosen one prophecy. Just a farm girl who happened to be wired differently, in the right place at the right time.
That's not how stories work,
Dunrick protested.
Good thing this isn't a story, then.
But of course it was. It was a story told in taverns and throne rooms, changed with each telling. In some versions, Tessa was blessed by ancient gods. In others, she was a secret dragon in human form. Brahms' version involved a complex metaphor about the resilience of the human spirit that nobody really understood, but everyone applauded anyway. The truth, as always, was simpler and stranger. A broken dragon and a fireproof farmer. An impossible friendship. A kingdom saved, not through violence, but through the radical act of deciding to try something different. And in the end, that's what humans did best. Not surviving dragonfire, that was just Tessa's thing. But surviving despair, surviving impossibility, surviving each other. Surviving by being too stubborn to do anything else.
Same time next week?
Dunrick asked as they prepared to leave.
Wouldn't miss it,
Tessa said.
I suppose I'll attend,
Vailgaroth allowed.
Your students need to see a proper dragon.
You teach a class on composting.
Proper dragons can be agricultural.
They walked out together, still arguing, into a world that had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best way to slay a dragon was to make friends with it instead. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was enough to save everyone. Even the dragon. Especially the dragon.